Hello, this is Carissa and Tom on Tentacles, the podcast from Crown and Reach. We are feeling our way through the murky waters of strategy and operations in an uncertain world. Speaking of uncertainty, by the way, I feel like we should maybe give a little disclaimer about the risk of quacking for this one.
Unsure whether quacking will happen.
Unsure, there's a highish chance, yes. 8 months pregnant, extremely grumpy, and get these weird, random, one-off, extremely loud hiccups that aren't quite a hiccup. A quack is just the closest description I can give. And it's so loud and so obnoxious that people turn around in the supermarket with the look on their face that says, "Where's that drunk person at 11 a.m? What are they doing here?"
Yeah, it's alarming, isn't it? But then they magically go away when we're teaching a dance class.
The quacks?
Yeah.
Or the people in the supermarket?
Oh, and both. The people in the supermarket won't come to classes.
Yeah, the quacks. When I'm really focused on something,
yeah,
then somehow that suppresses it. But let's see, I mean, sometimes in these podcast episodes I do have a momentary lapse in attention. So
surely not.
When that happens, if there's a very loud quack, do not be alarmed.
Is that when I'm off on some flight of explanation?
Oh, good guess.
Waffling away.
Well, the quack will bring you back.
That's true. It's a useful quack. We've got a bread maker recently, didn't we?
Oh, happy day. It's been the one ray of light in an otherwise fairly unpleasant nearly 9 months. No, genuinely, wow, I've always wanted to be one of those people who had a bread maker. And finally at age 37 it's become reality.
Is that then ticked off? The life list of dreams is done?
That's it, there's nothing left. Nothing left to live for.
I must say it is very good, and the bread that is made has been excellent.
It has been really good.
And now we can't get into the cupboards to get things because they're all full of flour.
It's a small price to pay for having fresh bread with no highly processed additives, etc., etc. Anyway, that's a different hill to die on than the one we're going to die on today.
Yeah, the reason we're talking about bread makers isn't just general chat about our life situation. It's that bread makers are a fascinating example of when a human tacit skill was captured in machinery. There you go, which is relevant to today's world, isn't it? Because blah 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 AI.
Blah 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 AI. Yes, and it's not quite as simple as just get the machine to do exactly what the human does.
Not quite. No, not in this case. So if you think of a human, well, we've made bread, haven't we? I really enjoy the magic of making a brioche dough, where it's this absolutely ragged mess all over the counter for about 10 minutes of constant kneading, and you've got butter all over you and it's just smearing everywhere, and then it just magically turns into this incredible smooth elastic dough, and all of the mess just gets picked up, and suddenly you've got a clean counter and a beautiful little ball of dough.
It's a lovely example of many examples that reveal that you are a true technique fetishist.
I am, it's true, it is. It's one of the most magical things in all of baking.
It is, yeah. I think I've experienced it to a lesser degree while making brioche buns as well. But I often try to take shortcuts by, like, you know, not kneading it or not letting it rise, and then we wonder why the flatbreads are so disgusting.
Mind you, I did try some parathas recently, and they were pretty poor.
They were Carissa level poor.
Yeah.
It was quite something.
I wonder, so it's the reason I learned how to make the brioche dough was workshops at Bread Ahead in London, which, big recommendation if you're around London and you can get along to one of their workshops. They're really good. Though having had the magic brioche experience, the pastry-based workshop was much more disappointing.
It doesn't have those magic moments where something messy suddenly isn't messy anymore.
Exactly. It's just fiddly and messy the whole time. And then a bit too sweet. Anyway. That aside, yeah. So you've got that human felt sense of, like, physically kneading the dough and feeling the tactility of it, and various techniques like stretching it out and slamming it on the counter and doing all this sort of stuff. And the thing with a machine-based bread maker is it cannot replicate that. Or if you tried to replicate that with a machine, you'd need all sorts of weird sensors, you'd need all sorts of controls that would be really hard.
Right, so it's just not possible to get from A to B via the same route as a human baker.
Exactly. But there's a an academic paper which looks at how bread makers, like bread machines, captured the same end result, but by coming at it from a different angle entirely. And so they've got, all the bread makers have got a system where they use a paddle or 2 paddles, haven't they, to do the kneading and everything like that, which is, it doesn't seem like it should be enough. Just the little paddle in a bowl and it goes round, and how can that possibly lead it to the same quality as a human doing all of this stuff?
A human with 2 hands.
Yep.
And all the different muscles that make the hands do the things.
And multiple techniques, multiple directions, multiple styles of stretching and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And an ability to sense when it's kind of ready. I think an experienced baker just feels it, don't they? That you can sense it.
I think that's another thing that you and I both experienced. You can follow a recipe to the letter 2 times in a row, but one day it works, another day it doesn't. Sometimes it's things like the humidity in the air affects the amount of hydration that you have to put into the dough.
Yeah.
Have I used hydration in the right way there? I'm now second guessing myself.
You absolutely have used hydration in the right way. And that gives another sort of an angle on this tacit knowledge side of things, doesn't it? Where it takes hundreds of repetitions to build up the pattern matching that can tell you. So an experienced baker, I'm quite sure, would be able to just put their hand on the dough that we've been trying to make and go, not enough hydration, or some other problem with it, and they'd just fix it.
Yeah.
Which is very, from the dance world, the thing that we can relate that to is the ability to do a swing out, which is a classic move in Lindy Hop. And it's quite a complex move because it's very dynamic and you're always adjusting at every point along the journey to get there. So it looks really simple. You start, one person goes around the other person, and you end up back in the place you started at. And you'd think you could just do that. But actually it takes thousands of repetitions for beginners to start to get the feel for it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's a life's work, isn't it?
It is. But the interesting thing is noticing that now, after 25 years of doing them, I can sense what's happening at different points along the way. I can adjust it on the fly to create different effects, and then fix it when it's going wrong.
Exactly.
All that sort of stuff becomes easy, but you couldn't possibly do that for beginners. Like, it's not going to happen. And I feel like that's where we're at on the bread and dough journey for ourselves, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to know, like, what is a bread maker doing if it's not doing that fine-grained adjustment? Like, how is it getting to the same result?
It's a very good question.
This is what you wanted to talk about today.
It is, and I really probably should have actually thoroughly read the paper before going into it, because we can only now speculate what it is. Like, can it sense from the paddle motor feedback what the texture of the dough is? However, it can't add more water, can it? Because you just put in the ingredients. No, exactly.
I think it's safe to say that it's not able to make that level of fine-grained adjustments, particularly not for a bread maker that cost 100 and something quid instead of 1,000 quid.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I remember when you first floated the idea of talking about this, you talked about how certain things get codified differently.
Yeah, and that's the interesting journey. And it's the journey I think we are seeing when we look at the people who are most advanced with how they're using LLMs now and the latest sort of models. What's starting to emerge is this behaviour of codifying human tacit knowledge into something that's made more explicit and works with the way that the latent space-based models, which are a bit random and sometimes do stupid stuff, you've got to create what's starting to be called, I think, a harness for those models that constrains their worst excesses of stupidity while being able to reliably get to a result much, much easier that works well enough.
Yeah, okay, and that's something that I've been wanting to point out as well. Like, I'm sure the best bread makers, as in human bread makers, would say you can never get to the top quality of bread through a machine bread maker, right? There is always going to be some sort of compromise on the quality, even if you can get to something pretty good. And that's what you've just said, right? Like, you harness the something. What is it you're harnessing?
Harness the models.
Harness the models
to build a harness for them.
You're basically trying to limit the downside, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to limit the things that they could do to really mess up the bread.
Yeah.
And get it to something that is consistently good enough, even if it's not top tier.
Yeah.
Michelin starred brioche.
Exactly. You're right. You're never going to get that from a machine, because it would just be too complicated and expensive to build that machine. But you can get to something that's 80%, that's basically satisfying. It's good enough for incredibly less effort and time and development of skill over many years.
Yeah,
and maybe that's a good trade-off.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that we've been talking about ever since we first met, which is developing an understanding of where the bar is for good enough. Like, what job are you trying to do? Do you just need to make sandwiches for your family, or are you trying to, impress a date that you really want to go well?
Yeah.
And a 4 out of 5 cheese sandwich just won't cut mustard.
Yeah, and there's always a question of how long do you have to make the sandwich? How long do you want to put into it? How much do you want to spend on ingredients? Those questions are all there, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And I think we've definitely done an episode before about the focusing illusion, and how everybody in their part of a business thinks that the business could be doing much better at their part of the business, and that it would be really good for the business if it did, but they're not seeing the bigger picture and the trade-offs that are being made at that level.
Yeah, let's try and find that episode. I think that was quite a good one.
That was
from
quite
last year.
Quite practical and upsetting, maybe. And it's upsetting because it's that there are these twin narratives going on. I mean, there's multiple narratives going on when it comes to AI, which is just a marketing term, but the idea of LLM models. And one of the narratives is they're going to take your job, they're going to do everything that humans can do. And that doesn't seem to hold up fully. The other narrative is they are hopeless, they're never going to be able to do your job, that it's all going to come tumbling down and we'll go back to how things were before. And that also seems to be untrue. And I think something that is becoming clear is that businesses on the whole are absolutely fine with lowering the level of satisficing that they're okay with in order to do more stuff more cheaply.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. Probably for worse.
Probably for worse, but not guaranteed for worse. I think that's the thing. There's always a chance that actually doing something a bit crap but having it done is better than taking 10 times as long over it.
Yeah, as somebody points out, like the book that you never write is way less helpful than the book that has got loads of typos in it but somebody can read and use and makes a difference to their life. So yeah, is that true? Is that true for businesses where they're just spewing out more code that's bad and creates an attack surface, or that adds more complexity and makes it more confusing for users?
Well, I want to know how does the bread machine map onto businesses?
And that is the question. So if we look at specifically then, how is this starting to apply to code generation, like engineering, developers? There has always been this, developers have developed, oh God, that's a terrible phrase. Engineers have built their tacit sense of what is quality, how to solve various coding problems, how to write good code that lasts. To become a senior developer, you spend years in the weeds of annoying bugs and weird edge cases and difficult connectors and nonsense.
Right, and it's
building
that kind of
your pattern recognition.
The tacit knowledge that gives you that pattern recognition that you can't necessarily point to and say, it's that because of this.
Exactly, yeah. And so an engineer can then often, a really experienced engineer can often glance at a code base and at a weird bug that's happening and get a sense for why that's happening and what it might be, and be quite right quite a lot of the time. Not always, but there's often this, and it feels like a spidey sense. It's like, that's probably something in that layer. And then they'll zero in and they'll find something that was a silly mistake that nobody knew would be a silly mistake because it's
kind of
so obscure.
Following the breadcrumbs until you find something concrete.
Yep. And when you're starting out, you don't know where to look. You don't know what you're really looking at. You've got to think through everything painstakingly, and often you literally can't resolve these weird edge case bugs in the time you have available to you. Whereas a senior developer who has been through the ringer enough times can just spot it and fix it. Now what we're seeing, and so that's a skill which is built by doing it. It's the equivalent to the baker making thousands of loaves and starting to feel when the hydration is wrong. You know, that sort of thing, but with way more things that could go wrong and way more moving parts and stuff that's pretty complicated. Now what happens when LLMs start generating code is, somebody put it quite well, I think, that probably about half the time it does something that's surprisingly good and actually is maybe better than you would have thought of, more elegant, comes at it from an angle that's actually quite helpful. Okay, that's actually better than I would have done. Then about 30 to 40% of the time it does it all right, it's fine. And then 10% of the time it does something so stupid, so damaging, that it would be weird if someone who was trying to harm your business was writing code that bad. It's just so bad. It's unbelievable.
And so this is where the harnessing comes in.
Exactly. And what we start to see with teams who have managed to harness LLMs to generate good enough code, what you have to do is break it down into small enough chunks. You have to break down the bigger job into small tasks, each of which can be tested and won't blow the context window. And context window is how much you can fit into an LLM prompt at any one time, which is smaller than you might think, even though it's been growing over time. You have to break down your bigger task. Then what you have to do is try the small task, but put testing outside of it. So you put a test outside that small task that says, did it do this well enough? And the first thing is, did it write code that even compiles? Or does it hit compiler errors? And those happen sometimes. You then send it back. If it fails, you send it back to try again. If it fails, you send it back to try again. If it fails, you send it back to try again. And a pattern that seems to be emerging is, if it fails 3 times and it looks like it's getting stuck in a loop, then you like bump that up to the human, who then escalate it to the human, who can then change something about the harness or change something about what it's being asked to do, basically adjust the guardrails or somehow break it out of the loop it's got stuck in, so that then it can find something that compiles. Merely compiling isn't good enough for code, though, is it? You can write code that compiles but doesn't do the business job it's supposed to do. So the next layer out is that the developers have to get good at specifying what is this going to look like when it is working in the way that is intended. And that then creates the next layer of testing. You get through the compile gate, now you have to get through the does it meet spec gate.
Does it do the job it's supposed to gate?
Yeah. And there's a really weird but quite positive effect that's happening, which is there's a discipline called test-driven development. Have you heard of this?
I have, yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Which is acronymized to TDD, and is something that I think most developers would say is really good practice. It's a very good thing to do, and yet most people don't do it.
Like writing a brief if you need to write some copy.
Yes. And you once upon a time made a tool for doing that.
I did.
And people didn't use it.
We used it a few times.
Yeah. We did. I used it and it was absolutely brilliant.
I think the problem was, though, like by the time you're in a position to make a tool like that, you kind of don't really necessarily need to use it anymore because you have enough tacit knowledge to know where to probe, where you need more information.
Exactly. And if you're not in the position where you have enough tacit knowledge, you don't realise what you don't know.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know, and it just seems like you're creating work for yourself, waste of time.
Yeah. And that is what was happening with TDD, I think. Until you get a situation where, in order to get the machine, the models, to do something resembling anything that you want, you have to now write tests. You have to do test-driven development as part of the harness for the machine.
So it's gone from something that's like a nice to have but rarely done to something that is an essential part of the process.
Yeah. And so this thing that was before like a disciplined practice that only an elite few would actually do, and they'd have to force themselves to do it because, I've heard from developers, they know it's valuable, but it's also boring and quite difficult. And we've seen this over and over again, actually, when we work with our clients, when we work with teams of clients. People like the bit which is sort of coming up with ideas and jamming and da-da-da, but actually pinning down some of the difficult trade-offs, that is difficult and it's upsetting at times. And one of the tricks we do is we make that more enjoyable. We make it less something that you feel like you have to do in an explicit way, which means it's not as unpleasant.
I think that's fair. Yeah. It's done in a sort of live collaborative forum.
Yeah. But what you see when people aren't being specific about those trade-offs is misalignment. Everybody thinks that the trade-offs are something different than they are, and they're working from their own tacit sense of what good enough is, and nobody's agreed on what good enough is, and so you get these weird loops where you get one group saying, I'll know it when I see it, and another group saying, but can't you just tell me what it is that you want?
And are you saying that does or doesn't apply so much to, the engineering side of things?
I think that applies massively to engineering, because the classic quip was always the client doesn't know what they want until you give it to them, and then it's not that.
Yeah.
And it is because
it applies equally to design, copywriting. I mean, it does apply it applies to everything. There we go.
Anything. I think anything with any level of complexity, anything with any level of, I think that it's the I'll know it when I see it type problem, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's all about how effectively and how quickly can you get to that first. Or it's not the first test as described by you just now, but that test gate where it's, here's the thing, it's doing a job, is it doing what you thought it was going to do?
Yep.
Do you actually want it to do something different? Have you changed your mind about what you want it to do?
Exactly, that's the really critical point at that second test gate. Is it doing what you specified that it should do? Yes. Is that actually what you wanted? No. So then you update the specification gate, you change the tests that you're using. And then you run it again.
Yeah, so being able to do that more efficiently and, with more automation than, time-intensive human brain power, I guess that's what you're saying. That's where these the companies that are managing to do this harnessing are using these LLMs in quite a powerful way.
Yes, yeah, and the way that one developer described it is that now actually writing lines of code has become close to free, effectively. Whereas before, a human had to put effort into switching themselves into the mode of how to write code, which is cognitively demanding for humans. It's a translation that's very difficult to do and can easily be broken out of, which is why we had this idea of you shouldn't interrupt developers, it's very costly. Well, now you can have an LLM doing that, and the LLM is brilliant at generating code. Then you have to then you put your human effort into effectively managing a load of idiots, and someone describes it as it's like being a nursery manager.
Wow.
Because like when you when our little lad is helping with the dishes,
oh, yes.
He's very well meaning, and sometimes he'll get something clean, it'll be fine, but sometimes he'll smash something and spray water all over the kitchen, and actually cleaning up after him is more work than it would have been to do the dishes in the first place.
Yeah, but I mean, then that begs the question of, is it worth it in the long run because you're developing skills for that person, right? So it's not necessarily as simple as that particular moment, is it?
Yeah, and that's where then the AI discourse has jumped. For us, it seems Well, there are times when we say, actually, no, thank you, please don't do the dishes, because we don't have the capacity to do the clean-up and to handle all of the mess in that moment. But we will make the choice to have him do the dishes sometimes.
Because it's good for him.
It's good for him, and he enjoys it, and there's a pleasure in that. It's a bonding moment. All of that is good. And that's the same thing that's been happening naturally inside of companies for new developers. Junior developers go through that ringer of writing out code by hand, having to spot these weird edge cases and bugs by hand, having to learn what are the nuances when that person, that the CEO says this to you, that you know from past experience, they don't mean that, they mean something else.
Is that still happening then? Because I mean, the question I was going to ask next is, what happens when we run out of people who've got this tacit knowledge? Right?
That is the question.
And you've got no people who've started as people who know nothing and worked their way up to having that tacit knowledge.
Yeah.
Are people still giving junior developers jobs?
So, at the moment, there's two things that I've seen on this front. One is every big consultancy has produced some sort of report that says the lack of a talent pipeline, the fact that we're no longer getting juniors to do grunt work, is going to cause a massive crash of tacit skills in 20 years' time. And it is possibly the frontier for that is maybe law. Because how do new lawyers learn how to do law? They do it by having to read and develop documents painstakingly, line by line, in a horrific grunt work kind of way that, I mean, we have friends who are lawyers, and it's a brutal job in those early days. But you develop this real sense that then when you become partner and you're then managing the juniors, it's great. Well, LLMs are brilliant at all that text processing type stuff, aren't they? So much of the law is explicit stuff that's on paper in massive file documents.
True, but I mean, so much of it isn't, right? So much of it is about grey areas and how you interpret a particular clause and how that interacts with other laws that maybe say something slightly different. Like, it's actually...
So then we get to that there's a spectrum of skill from the explicit through the explicable through to the tacit, and then there's also like relational. And there's a sense, I think one way that I'm thinking about it here is, if it's already explicit, you can write it down and someone could follow those instructions and do it. Well, then LLMs can do it with a harness. Not generally, because they'll just do random stuff that 10% of the time. If it is, then there's a space of stuff which is explicable. So we can't necessarily, it's not written down yet, but it could be inferred from the vast body of stuff that is written down. And maybe if the LLM can read all of the emails from partners back and forth and juniors asking questions and blah, 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 maybe there's more that can be made explicit from the stuff that is currently not, that's currently hidden, and that for any human to go through all of it would be impossible. But then there is some stuff that is tacit, that is not going to be explicable by a model that can only read language and doesn't have a physical presence. And then we get to then we're back to the breadmaker.
Well, I guess
maybe there's another way around it where it could be made explicable, but not in the way that a human would do it.
Well, I guess I'd have the same question for lawyers which I had for engineers, right? Which is, if you don't go through that grueling process of reading documents, thousands of documents and comparing thousands of documents, then
that's exactly the worry.
You then jump to the next level.
You don't have that spidey sense when you're a partner, and now when something goes wrong, you don't know how to fix it, you don't know where it's gone wrong, you're back in the position of being a junior again. And that is the worry. So every major consultancy has produced a report that says that is coming.
So that's the worry, but it sounds from what you've just said like it might be possible to get LLMs to interpret more of the stuff that is not as explicit as it could be.
That's the big question mark. It's can we do the breadmaker trick on other fields and get something that's good enough but not in the way that a human would have done it?
But that still doesn't solve the problem of, if you don't hire any junior lawyers, like, what do you do when the LLM taps out at its maximum capacity of understanding whatever level of complexity it can understand?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
We don't yet know what that level of complexity is, and it is clear that more firms should be still just putting humans through the paces of learning to wash the dishes, even though they make a mess, writing out documents by hand, etc., etc. But when push comes to shove and they don't have time or
money,
appetite for it, are they going to actually do that reliably?
My gut reaction prediction is we'll see what happens in 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a question of energy gradients, isn't it? Like, when doing things the hard way is so much harder than taking, the easy way that it looks like it takes something hard and makes it easy and it's a great solution, but actually you're cutting corners and that's probably going to cause problems later down the line.
Yeah.
If you're not anywhere close to experiencing those problems, like persuading someone to do it the hard way when resources are tight, like they are, in this era, it sort of feels like we're going in a particular direction and we'll just see what happens in future as a result of this. So there's one world which says this is just kind of like the Industrial Revolution, and what we're seeing is that during that phase we got factories, and so humans didn't have to physically move things and physically hit things with hammers in the same way. You had factories where some of that could be offloaded onto machines, which then means that across humanity we are all less fit than we used to be. We're less strong, less fit, less physically capable. Oh yes, our jaws are less well developed because we've got used to eating pappy, over-industrialised food.
Which gives us loads of problems with teeth crowding because our jaws are smaller. There's weird knock-on effects that we don't realise are those knock-on effects. But there's this weird countervailing thing, which I think we'll see as well, which is that right now, the absolute peak athletes are fitter than anyone in history ever was. So we've just had somebody who ran a marathon in under 2 hours, which is unbelievable. At the London Marathon, the 2-hour barrier has been broken, which is like the 4-minute mile barrier being broken in a way. It's just, people thought it was impossible, and a Kenyan has just done it, which is really cool. And so we've got, nobody 100 years ago could have contemplated doing that. There was no ability to do a marathon that fast. This is because if you are the very peak athlete, well, you don't have to work in a factory as well anymore. You can just train. And we know much more about biochemistry, about physiology, about how to train, how to achieve these incredible results. And when, we've talked about this in another podcast as well, when a chunk of the market moves towards commodification and moves towards satisficing at a much lower energy gradient, it does create a pocket for artisanal work where a lot of human effort is put in and it is a luxury item, which is rather like the artisanal bread makers. There's still a market for artisanal bread, even though bread is cheap on the shelves of supermarkets made by machines. So do we see that with lawyers, where there's going to be artisanal lawyers?
And artisanal software engineers.
Yeah, and it's a way that some engineers are going, certainly, is to say, we do not use LLMs here at all. We do this all by hand, and we craft something, and our bet is that that's going to be way better, and we're going to get something that is a luxury item that is worth paying for.
I was making me think of you and I don't fall out often, but when we do, it's usually to do with me sensing that you've used one of your little AI friends to draft something that's actually it's taken a draft that was written by you, a human, and made it terrible and hard to follow.
Yeah.
And then we have to try and untangle the mess.
Yeah, I did experiment with it, and I have come to that conclusion that it's not worth it.
But we still bear the
rubbish.
scars. Your use of dashes and hyphens is now, I think it's permanently,
I think I'm going to relearn that. I'll get back to it. It's all right. I'll get back to it.
Twitching at the memory of that. But okay. I think it makes sense about that. There's always going to be space for people who do it the hard way, because the hard way is also high value. in a sense, like knowing that it's been done the hard way and you're going to get that extra 5-10% of perfection on top of something that's good enough.
Yeah.
There are always going to be people who want to pay for that, for the thing that they feel passionate about.
Yes, I think that's it. And I think that's where we're putting our bet when it comes to stuff like writing, when it comes to stuff like doing this podcast. You can now use, what's it called, Notebook LM, to generate a personalised podcast for you that sounds like, exactly like one of those cheesy American podcasts with someone interviewing somebody else talking about a book and applying it to your context if you've shared it. And I've tried that as well, and it is quite remarkable, but it has a hollowness to it. Rather like there's a bunch of people who write newsletters that I read, and there's some that I just have gone off, and I think it's because they're using AI, and I think it's because then the AI just is a bit hollow. There's nothing behind it.
Right. There was a really good article by one of our main bays,
yes.
Experimental History. Was he talking about like writing an AI?
Ooh.
I think he was talking. Yeah, I can't. We'll see if we can find it. But
yeah,
he was talking about how, there's like a level of magic that you get in writing that an AI just can't achieve. Yeah,
and there's something about the AI is not having a human struggle. There was a nice article I literally just saw by Luca Dell'Anna, who's another of our bays, and he was saying, what is special about humans, actually? Why are humans different from the AI? And a lot of the intelligence tests, he say, don't add up. Like how many R's are there in the word strawberry was the famous one where the AI thought it was 2. And now I don't think that's the case, because the people who make the AIs have put lots of controls around it so that it passes these gotchas. But he points out that 500 years ago, most humans wouldn't know how many R's there were in the word strawberry because no one could spell. Everyone was illiterate, pretty much. So it's actually, that's not what makes humans special. That's a specific thing that we have trained and learned. So it's not that. So what is it? And his point is, what makes humans special compared with AI is scarcity and skin in the game. Skin in the game!
Skin in the game is skin in the game. Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
Can we dig that out just for fun?
Oh yeah, we'll dig that one out.
Was that a tweet?
It was a little article. It was a review of Nassim Taleb's book Skin in the Game.
And it was just hilarious.
Skin in the game is skin in the game. It was a parody of his bloviating or whatever writing style. The ideas are still good though.
The ideas are still good. I think it was a loving parody.
It was. Yeah. He is a certain character. Worth reading still. And so one thing is scarcity. If you're chatting with Claude, so are 5 million other people at the same time. There is no scarcity there. Whereas if you're chatting with me, you can't be chatting with anyone else, and that attention is valuable because it's scarce.
Right.
And the other thing is skin in the game. If you give me advice and then it doesn't work out, that reflects on you personally.
My reputation's on the hook.
Yeah. Whereas if an LLM does it, well, it's all on all of them. They all say we may mess up. Don't take anything we say as read. That then, they're disclaiming right there. There's no skin in the game there. If the LLM company gives bad advice, it doesn't seem to harm their reputation whatsoever. So I thought that was an interesting framing.
Yeah, I like that.
Which brings me back to that scale, that sliding scale that I was thinking about, which is this knowledge that runs from explicit through explicable, through tacit, through relational. Well, the relational is about scarcity, interpersonal connections, networks of people that you know and trust, and it is about skin in the game. And that's somewhere where, as it stands at the moment, it doesn't look like LLMs or any sort of AI system can touch.
There we go. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it a nice place to wrap?
I think it might be.
Without a single quack.
Wow. And can we now go and use our bread maker to make a wrap? That was so bad I have to stop there.
Okay.